Welcome to the Libido Lounge, where we focus on all things love, lust, and libido. We believe that fabulous sex is important to health as exercise and good food. Hey everybody, Dr. Diane, your Libido Doc here. Welcome back to another episode of The Lounge. I'm so excited to have you today. We're talking about the top 3 most major root causes of a low libido. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't even know for sure if I have a low libido. Is my libido low? Make sure you go back to earlier episodes of this podcast where I talk about that, or you can just head over to libidoquiz.com and take my free libido quiz, which is going to tell you, it's going to go through a research-based questionnaire about if your libido is actually low, so you'll learn. And if it is, then it's going to take you to a second part of the quiz, which is going to tell you the top likely root causes. Also, I'll include in my show notes information to my post about wanting to want it, and make sure you look out for my book coming out later this year called Want to Want It, where we're going to go into all of these topics in much more depth and detail. So let's talk about the top root causes. So the top 3 root causes are physical, personal, and interpersonal. And so those are the top categories as far as why we are not having that charged up libido, why we're not having that passion, why we kind of lost some of those juicy, yummy feelings. So we're going to talk in more detail. What do those mean? So let's break this down for you guys. So physical reasons for low libido are commonly sex hormones, the most commonly known one. And it's really common. Like, I work with a lot of people that are hormone specialists, and they send a lot of their clients to me because a very common thing that will happen is hormones will get balanced, which is amazing. We can feel so much better when hormones are balanced. And while it can fix some people's libido and it can turn on that passion, for many people, they get their hormones balanced and then it's like, well, I don't have my want it back, right? What's happening? And so that's why people get referred to me, because while hormones are very, very known for supporting a healthy libido and absolutely important for libido in so many areas to keep your hormones balanced, it doesn't always fix things. And by hormones, I'm talking about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol, those adrenal hormones, and your thyroid hormones, right? So there's a lot wrapped up in that hormonal picture. So that's one thing. Cardiovascular is another thing that we will put under the physical root cause category. So cardiovascular issues for low libido really are related to blood flow. So one of the things you may have heard me talk about, because I like to say this a lot, is low libido oftentimes is the first sign of a cardiovascular problem. Cardiovascular problem is the leading cause of disease worldwide, and low libido is oftentimes an early warning sign. I learned this from amazing cardiologist, Dr. Joel Kahn. And so essentially from, thinking about that, we think about that oftentimes with men, because men with erectile dysfunction, cardiovascular issues are oftentimes tied up with that. But with women, the whole thing with women is that we also have cardiovascular root causes preventing blood flow, preventing that erectile tissue from getting engorged, preventing lubrication, and frankly, preventing pleasure. So that's a major root cause. Nervous system, right? So having that right signal from your brain to your erectile tissue from the nerves to get you turned on is also a major thing. And then the 4th category is stress. So stress, I did mention actually some of the hormones in the hormone section of this talk already. So stress is cortisol and DHEA are those 2 major stress hormones. But stress is a huge, usually breaks for most people libido. There's occasionally people, and Dr. Emily Nagoski talks about this in her work and her study on libido, where stress can be an accelerator, right? So sometimes when people get stressed, they get revved up. For most people, based upon the chemistry of our brain and how the chemistry of our brain affects our genital response, that we actually see that stress is, for the most part, it turns down that libido. So those are all the top physical root causes. There's others, right? Anything that can inflame us, toxins, for example, definitely can impact libido. Certain toxins like BPAs, for example, are known to be endocrine disruptors that can disrupt our hormones. So there's other like sub categories, right? And we could go very, very deep down some rabbit holes here, which I do love to do, and I do teach people, but one thing at a time. As far as like the physical stuff from the physical tier, those are some of the top causes. Now, some of the second category we have is the personal. So the personal category of root causes for libido, I've talked about throughout this podcast in pieces, but I haven't really framed it this way for you guys to understand it. So the personal root causes are going to be things like confidence, clarity, right? So from a clarity standpoint, do you really know the difference between your needs, your preferences, your desires, right? Do you really know like, oh, wow, you are not going to enjoy and not going to be able to get into your body if you don't have 10 minutes of soft touch ahead of time. You know, I know couples that start sex every single time with a trading off of massage because they know that's a need to get them into the moment, right? So do you understand what truly needs you have in order to be turned on, in order to enjoy it? Do you know your preferences of like, oh, well, it's not a need, but if we can do this, I really like it. Do you know your turn-offs? And so much of the time we are so programmed by what society says that sex is that we don't really understand our own needs, wants, preferences, desires. So that's a huge thing under the personal root cause. And this is where sometimes the concept that a lot of us in the sex world talk about is like having the wrong type of sex comes up, is because if we don't know our needs, preferences, wants, and desires, and we're just kind of going for it, we might be having sex in a way that is actually not really turning us on, that is not feeling good. And frankly, if it's not doing those things, it's not very motivating to go back for more, right? Let's just face it. So when we really get into our needs, wants, preferences, and desires, what we begin to do is we have a personal relationship with, oh, this is the right type of sex for me. This is a type of sex. This is a type of intimacy. This is a type of touch. This is a type of love that really helps me keep coming back to more, more and more and more. Some of this also from a personal standpoint is making sure we have good pelvic health and pelvic tone. It's amazing when we are doing proper weightlifting for our vagina, when we're doing proper Kegel exercises for our vagina, these sorts of things as women. And also for men, when you are doing exercises to actually keep the musculature of your cock strong. All of these different things can actually make a big difference in the process of sexuality and enjoyment. Like for men, I know a lot of men that have like gone through like David Data's program, for example, and really have worked to control orgasm and really have worked to edge, that process where you're getting close to orgasm and you pull it back and you're getting close to pull it back, which makes things last longer, which also can bring a lot more pleasure bidirectionally, right? And so these are some of the practices though on a personal level of like, have we just like going to a gym, have we actually done the work to make sure our pelvic floor is strong, to make sure our muscles are strong? Have we actually done any internal work? Because one of the things from a personal root cause is if the muscles of whatever, anatomy you have, if the muscles are not working super well, if they don't know when to contract or they're so contracted because we actually hold so much tension on our pelvic floor that they're not able to relax appropriately, guess what? That's where we can get pain. That's where it doesn't feel good. That's where oftentimes we can have a difficult time orgasming. So when we're actually doing things from a personal standpoint, even like internal massage for women that we can do ourselves using fingers, using sexual massagers, there's actually professionals that even help with that sort of thing, doing pelvic floor release techniques, right? So we can actually start getting the tissue functioning well. That also falls under the personal root cause category. We can go deeper and deeper in this, of course. There's also the ability to, know and understand how to begin to communicate. There's also the concept I talk about in this work of the 5 sexual types that I have defined. Right. And we talk about that in other videos. So make sure you go listen to that. But essentially, remember, the 5 sexual types are kind of like the 5 sexual languages. And the concept of sexual languages is really to say, okay, just like the love languages, right? Just like Gary Chapman coined the love language, title. The sexual languages are essentially these ways, these types, these typologies of how we show up and how we show up into sexuality in our best self, right? So that's another important thing. Okay, now beyond that, we have interpersonal. So this is the 3rd root cause here. So if you want it, we want our physical, personal, and our interpersonal to all be turned on, revved up, super juicy. So interpersonal is about how we relate to our partner. Do we know their sexual type? Have we talked to them, right? Have we actually communicated to them about our own personal needs, wants, desires, preferences, and vice versa? Do we schedule sex? Do we schedule our, as I call them, our intimacy escapades, right? We have our physical intimacy escapades and we have our emotional intimacy escapades. Do we explore those? Have we done things with those as far as scheduling them and having sacredness around those times, right? So all of that falls in the interpersonal. And so we don't know our body. We don't know our partner's body, and we're not communicating about the uniqueness of our own body. We aren't teaching ourselves to do this, and we're not prioritizing each other. And we're not being open to the novelty of how to create passion that I've already talked about on this podcast. That's where we can really begin to fall away from the desire and the wanting to want it. So really in wanting to want it, and what you're going to be seeing throughout this year and later on this year, as I get my book out, and I don't have an exact date yet, but please do take the libido quiz and learn about, your own root causes here, because I'm going to be doing so much cool promotional stuff and giveaways and supportive stuff for you around my book launch. So definitely get on that libido quiz. So that will help us stay connected, so I can make sure to keep you posted on all those cool offerings as I have my Want to Want It book coming out later this year. And that's really it. So from there, the next thing for you is to go take the libido quiz to learn about some of these root causes. The libido quiz really focuses just on that physical side of things, but then also continue to look through this material to continue to follow me, because I'm going to continue to give you insight into not only these root causes, but what you do about them. So stay tuned for more with me on the Libido Lounge very, very soon. Make sure you do subscribe and share this with your friends so you know when all the juicy episodes are coming out. I can't wait to help you even more. This is Dr. Diane again. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Libido Lounge, and I'm reminding you to always stay sexy, always stay classy, and always remember to be a little badassy. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.